You've probably heard that Israel might have nuclear weapons. But what if I told you that not only is that true, they've had them for decades and got them in ways no one wants to talk about? We're talking secret deals, stolen uranium, fake companies, even Hollywood connections. Yeah, it's that wild. Stick around, because this story is going to blow your mind. Israel's nuclear weapons program began almost alongside the birth of the state itself. For David Ben-Gurion, Israel's founding father and first prime minister, it was clear that conventional weapons alone wouldn't be enough to survive against hostile and much larger Arab neighbors. He believed Israel must acquire nuclear capability to ensure its long-term security. Acting on that vision, Israel launched its nuclear program in the 1950s, with France playing a key role in its early development. France provided everything from a nuclear reactor to technical expertise, helping Israel build its secret Dimona nuclear facility in the Negev Desert. Israel publicly claimed this facility was for peaceful research purposes, but by the late 1950s, when international inspectors demanded access, Israel refused and continuously stalled. In fact, the cooperation between France and Israel was so secretive that even the United States was initially unaware of what was really happening at Dimona. Throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, the U.S. kept pressuring Israel to explain its nuclear activities. Under President John F. Kennedy, that pressure intensified. In 1963, Kennedy warned Israeli leaders that if they did not allow inspection of the Dimona reactor, U.S. support for Israel could be seriously affected. Tense letters were exchanged between Ben-Gurion and Kennedy, and at one point, Ben-Gurion even snapped back that Israel is not a satellite state of the United States. From 1961 to 1968, American experts visited the Dimona site 8 times, but Israel continually misled them. Sometimes it skipped the agreed-upon 2 annual inspections. Other times, it delayed them. When inspections did happen, Israel had constructed false walls to hide elevators leading to underground levels, and inspectors were denied access to restricted areas. After Kennedy's assassination in 1963, Lyndon B. Johnson and later Richard Nixon became presidents. Some believe Israel may have had a hand in Kennedy's assassination because of the intense pressure he was putting on Israel over Dimona. Regardless of the theory, after Kennedy's death, U.S. pressure eased, and Israel made significant progress in its nuclear weapons program. Before going further, here's a quick primer. Nuclear bombs generally fall into 2 categories. The first type uses plutonium-239 as its fissile material. This is a man-made element produced by bombarding uranium-238 in a nuclear reactor. The atomic bomb dropped on Nagasaki in 1945, known as Fat Man, used this type. Israel, with French help, had obtained plutonium reprocessing technology and was extracting weapon-grade plutonium-239 at Dimona. The second type of bomb uses uranium-235 as the fissile material. Natural uranium contains only about 0.7% of U-235, so it must be enriched using centrifuges. When enriched to 90% or more, it becomes weapon-grade. The bomb dropped on Hiroshima, called Little Boy, was uranium-235 based. It's also worth noting that both types of bombs have different design mechanisms, though we won't go into those details here. By 1964, Israel had already begun extracting weapons-grade plutonium at Dimona, and many experts believe Israel had successfully built nuclear weapons even before the 1967 Six-Day War. But Israel wasn't relying only on France. There's strong evidence that Israel also secretly acquired highly enriched uranium from the United States, likely without official U.S. approval. This leads us to one of the most controversial chapters in U.S.-Israel nuclear history, the NUMEC affair, also known as the Apollo affair. NUMEC, or Nuclear Materials and Equipment Corporation, was founded in 1957 in the small town of Apollo, Pennsylvania. It was a nuclear fuel company headed by Dr. Zalman Shapiro, a brilliant chemist who had previously worked on nuclear reactors for U.S. Navy submarines and the first commercial nuclear power plant. But Shapiro was also a staunch supporter of Israel and an active member of Zionist organizations. NUMEC was licensed by the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, AEC, to receive and process highly enriched uranium, over 90% pure, for use in naval reactors and research. Every gram of this material was strictly accounted for. How much was received, how much was used, how much was lost in processing, and how much remained in inventory. This was critical to ensure that none of the uranium fell into the wrong hands, because at over 90% enrichment, it could be used to build nuclear bombs. By the mid-1960s, the AEC began noticing discrepancies. In 1966, a government audit revealed a shocking discovery. Around 178 kilograms of highly enriched uranium was missing. Some loss could be explained by residue in pipes and machinery, but this was far beyond acceptable margins. By 1969, the shortfall had grown to 269 kilograms, and when NUMEC's Apollo plant shut down in 1978, the total deficit had reached 330 kilograms, enough to make at least 5 nuclear bombs like the one dropped on Hiroshima. This raised alarm bells across the US government. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, numerous agencies, including the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, FBI, CIA, Department of Justice, Defense Intelligence Agency, and National Security Council, conducted investigations. These continued into the 1980s. Most of their findings were classified at the time, but some were declassified after 2000, and they pointed in one direction: Israel. In 2009, the FBI released a detailed statement referencing an interview they had conducted back in 1980 with a former NUMEC employee. The employee claimed he had witnessed armed men loading canisters of highly enriched uranium onto a truck in 1965. He was shown a shipping list that indicated the material was being transported to an Israeli shipping company. The employee also said he was threatened and told not to speak of what he had seen. The FBI also declassified reports showing that Dr. Zalman Shapiro had regular contact with Israeli officials during his time at NUMEC, including members of Shin Bet, Mossad, and Lacham, Israel's secretive scientific intelligence agency. Further confirmation came from a 2015 CIA report, based on documents that had remained classified for decades. The CIA revealed that in 1968, it had found traces of highly enriched uranium near Israel's Dimona facility, and that the uranium had originated from the United States, specifically the Portsmouth enrichment plant in Ohio. This was the same uranium supplied to NUMEC. These revelations decades later strongly suggest that the missing uranium was in fact diverted to Israel. And yet, much of the full story remains classified even today. According to some sources, even Shapiro's wiretapped phone calls, believed to contain incriminating evidence, were not used in court. Some believe this was due to political pressure, or because the CIA didn't want its methods and intelligence sources exposed in a public trial. Dr. Zalman Shapiro resigned from NUMEC in 1970 and was quietly moved to another position outside the nuclear field. He passed away in 2016, never having been formally charged. The disappearance, or theft, of highly enriched uranium from NUMEC is considered one of the most mysterious and controversial events in U.S. nuclear history. In fact, no nuclear theft of this scale has ever been publicly confirmed anywhere in the world. While solid proof has never been officially released, the available declassified evidence makes it almost certain that this material was secretly transferred to Israel and used in its nuclear weapons program. So why didn't the U.S. ever take formal action? It's possible that, for the sake of diplomacy and national interests, the American government chose to quietly bury the matter. So far, we've seen how France directly helped Israel's nuclear program, and how the stolen highly enriched uranium from the US was likely used in Israeli bombs. By the 1960s, Israel already had plutonium reprocessing technology from France, which could be used to make atomic weapons. And the weapon-grade uranium it allegedly stole from the US could also be used to build a bomb. But there was a catch. While Israel may have had the fuel, it didn't yet have the advanced centrifuge technology needed to enrich uranium domestically. Naturally, if Israel wanted to enrich uranium on its own soil, it needed access to advanced centrifuge designs. And believe it or not, Israel got those too, through espionage. This is where a very surprising figure enters the story: Arnon Milchan. Milchan is a globally famous Hollywood producer behind blockbuster films like Pretty Woman, LA Confidential, Fight Club, Heat, and 12 Years a Slave. But back in the 1960s, Milchan was a young and successful businessman running his family's fertilizer company. According to his biography, one night in 1965, he met Shimon Peres at a nightclub. Peres, a rising figure in Israeli politics who would later become prime minister and president, recruited Milchan into Israel's secretive scientific intelligence agency Luckham. To obtain centrifuge blueprints, Milchan used his business network to identify a high-ranking German executive at the European Nuclear Enrichment Consortium Urenco. This executive had access to the engineering designs of centrifuges. Milchan's network reportedly bribed the executive, who then secretly brought the blueprints home. Israeli agents photographed every dimension of the designs and sent the images back to Israel, where scientists began working on reverse engineering the centrifuges. The original documents were quietly returned, leaving no trace. Interestingly, Dr. Abdul Qadir Khan, Pakistan's leading nuclear scientist, also worked at a European firm linked to Urenco. Media reports claim that Khan obtained similar blueprints from the same source. It's even alleged that Pakistan later passed these centrifuge designs to Iran. As a result, experts believe that the centrifuges used by Israel, Pakistan, and Iran all share the same engineering foundation. This is one reason why Israel's 2010 cyber attack using the Stuxnet virus was so effective against Iran's Natanz facility. Israel had tested the attack on its own centrifuges, which were likely built using the same design. But advanced centrifuges and enriched uranium weren't enough. Israel also needed raw uranium ore, U-238, to keep its nuclear program running. Since any legal purchase of uranium was monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, Israel had to act in secret. It had never allowed IAEA inspectors into its facilities, so it couldn't risk public uranium deals. In 1968, Israel launched a covert operation now known as the Plumbat Affair. Through a series of fake companies, Israel's Aleikum agency purchased 200 tons of uranium oxide, or yellowcake, from Antwerp, Belgium. The shipment was falsely declared as plumbat, a type of lead, to avoid suspicion. It was loaded onto a ship, Scheersburg A, which had been leased by a fake Liberian company. When the ship reached Rotterdam, the original crew was replaced with Israelis. The ship was then sailed into the Mediterranean, where Israeli naval forces oversaw the transfer of the uranium to another Israeli vessel. The empty ship was returned, and the entire operation was disguised as a normal trade deal between German and Italian firms. Declassified US and British documents also suggest that, around 1963 or 1964, Israel secretly acquired another 100 tons of uranium from Argentina. So now you've seen how Israel, at every stage, uranium ore, weapon-grade enriched uranium, and centrifuge technology, resorted to secretive and deceptive tactics to build its nuclear arsenal. But this raises a bigger question. Why did the US continue to look the other way? And did Israel ever test a nuclear weapon? In 1969, Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir held a crucial meeting with US President Richard Nixon. The result was an unwritten agreement now known as the Nixon-Meir Understanding. Under this informal deal, the US agreed never to pressure Israel publicly about its nuclear program. And in return, Israel pledged not to conduct nuclear tests or openly declare itself a nuclear power. This vague arrangement suited both sides. Israel got to build nuclear weapons without international interference, and the US avoided conflict with a key ally, especially important in an era when Washington was pressuring other countries to sign the 1968 Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT. After the Nixon-Meir deal, US officials avoided even mentioning Israel's nuclear status in public. In fact, many American policymakers were prohibited from raising the issue altogether. That's why the subject rarely comes up in American media or political discourse. A 2021 University of Maryland survey showed that while 60.5% of Americans believed Iran possessed nuclear weapons, even though Iran is a member of the NPT, regularly inspected by the IAEA, and consistently denies having nukes, 51.7% believed the same about Israel, despite the fact that Israel has never signed the NPT, is not subject to inspections, and has never officially confirmed or denied possessing nuclear weapons. Now, did Israel ever test its nuclear bomb? There are very few confirmed reports, but one mysterious event from September 1979 still sparks debate. The Vela incident. A U.S. satellite, Vela 6911, designed to detect nuclear detonations, recorded a double flash over the southern Atlantic Ocean near the Indian Ocean. Scientists believe this signal matched the signature of a nuclear explosion, possibly conducted by Israel, South Africa, or both together. Later, a White House scientific panel led by MIT professor Jack Ruina claimed it was likely a false alarm, possibly caused by a meteor or equipment malfunction. This became the semi-official stance. However, many experts disagreed, arguing that it was indeed a nuclear test, and that Washington was deliberately downplaying it. The U.S. Naval Research Laboratory, NRL, also conducted a highly classified study using hydroacoustic sensors and other secret systems. Their conclusion? The signals were consistent with a low-yield nuclear explosion. In 2010, the diaries of former President Jimmy Carter were published, strengthening the case. In one entry, Carter wrote, "We have a growing belief among our scientists that the Israelis did indeed conduct a nuclear test explosion in the ocean near the southern end of South Africa." Given Carter's access to classified information, his private conclusion lends major credibility to the theory that Israel tested a bomb in 1979. Many of the Vela incident's findings are still classified, but it's clear the president himself believed the explosion was Israeli in origin. So, does Israel admit to having nuclear weapons? Not exactly. Israel has never officially confirmed or denied its nuclear status. In 2011, when journalist Piers Morgan asked Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to confirm whether Israel had nukes, Netanyahu replied, "That's our policy, not to be the first to introduce nuclear weapons into the Middle East." What he meant by introduce was never clarified. During the Yom Kippur War of 1973, Israel faced one of the most dangerous moments in its history. Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on the holiest day in Judaism, catching Israeli forces off guard and making rapid advances in both the Sinai Peninsula and the Golan Heights. With defeat looming in the first 2 to 3 days, Israel reportedly took the extraordinary step of preparing its nuclear weapons, arming Jericho missiles and placing nuclear-capable aircraft on alert. These actions were picked up by U.S. intelligence satellites and are widely believed to have been a deliberate signal to Washington. In response, the Nixon administration launched Operation Nickel Grass, a massive military airlift to resupply Israel and prevent further escalation. This nuclear posturing not only helped secure urgent U.S. support, but also serves as strong evidence that Israel already possessed nuclear weapons in 1973. With so much compelling evidence and decades of reports, it's clear that Israel is indeed a nuclear power. Yet it has never signed the NPT, nor confirmed or denied its nuclear capabilities. But has any Israeli ever come forward to expose the truth? Yes, there was one such person, Mordechai Vanunu, a former technician at Israel's Dimona facility. In October 1986, he provided detailed information to the British newspaper The Sunday Times. Vanunu had worked at Dimona for 9 years and revealed that, by then, Israel was producing enough plutonium annually for around 12 nuclear bombs. According to him, when U.S. inspectors visited Dimona in the 1960s at JFK's insistence, they didn't realize that 6 underground floors existed, hidden behind false walls and concealed elevators. Vanunu secretly photographed the facility, capturing dozens of images, many of which were published in the Sunday Times. Before going public, Vanunu had become disillusioned with Israeli policies. He had opposed the 1982 invasion of Lebanon and supported equal rights for Palestinians. But before the full story could break, Mossad agents kidnapped him. A female agent lured him from London to Rome, where he was drugged and abducted. Vanunu was taken to Israel, convicted of espionage, and sentenced to 18 years in prison, half of which he spent in solitary confinement. Even after his 2004 release, Israel barred him from traveling or speaking with foreign journalists, a restriction still in place today. So yeah, whether the world wants to admit it or not, all signs point in the same direction. Israel has had nukes for decades, And it didn't exactly play by the rules to get there. From secret deals to stolen blueprints, it's like something straight out of a spy thriller, except it's all real. And according to reports, Israel is estimated to have anywhere between 90 and 400 nuclear warheads today. If you found this story eye-opening, help us bring more untold truths to light. Like this video, share it with others, drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more well-researched, deep-dive content like this.